Title of the topic today is Know Our Numbers. Hello friends, welcome to the channel Simplify Maths. Today we are going to discuss about numbers. Title of the topic today is Know Our Numbers. In this topic we will be covering about different categories of the numbers into which the numbers have been categorized. So the first set is we call as natural numbers. So what are natural numbers? So these are numbers which start with number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and they go to infinite, which means there is no limit. Actually we can talk about any number of numbers which come in this series. So they basically we have to learn that natural numbers start with number 1 and they go to infinite. And after natural numbers we have a set called whole numbers, and the difference between the whole numbers and natural number is the natural numbers start with number 1, 2, 3 and they go up to infinite, and the whole numbers they not only include the natural numbers, they include the number 0. So basically whole numbers start with number 0, number 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5 and go to infinite. So these are called the whole numbers. And after natural numbers and whole numbers we have a category called integers. So what are integers? So integers include all the whole numbers and they include their negative counterparts. So what we can say is, like, we have whole numbers starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and they go to infinite. But in integers we also have -1, -2, -3, -4 and they go on the negative side and they can be infinite as well. So what we can say is integers are including the whole numbers on the positive side and also on the negative side. So these are called the integers. And then we can also further divide integers into positive integers, negative integers and a number 0. So this basically we can say, like, this number 0, this is one set, and then we have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 and so on into up to infinite. And on the negative side we have -1, -2, -3, -4 and it is up to infinite. And this group we can call as negative integers and this group we can call as positive integers. So basically this whole group is called integers, and this can be further divided into negative, 0 or positive integers. And these integers we can basically represent on a number line. So what is the meaning of it? Like we learned in the earlier case, we can draw a line. On that line we place the numbers on equal distances. So assume this is 0 and on first distance we have number 1, then this number 2, 3, 4 and 5. On the negative side we have -1 on equal distances, and certainly this is up to infinite. So this is called a number line, and on this number line the number 0 is representing the middle, the central point, and if we go towards right of it we have the positive integers. If we go towards negative side of it, on the left side of it we have the negative integers. And then after this we have a term called absolute value of an integer. So what do you mean by absolute value of an integer? So absolute value of an integer is basically, we can say this is the value of that integer without the sign, like we want to know what is the value of that integer despite it's negative or positive. Or in other words, we can say the absolute value of an integer is its distance from the central point 0. So for example, if we say integer 4, it is the distance of this integer from the central point 0, which is 1, 2, 3 and 4. So this is basically 4. So absolute value of 4 is 4, because when we say 4, it is basically a plus 4 and its absolute value is 4. And just like the absolute value of a positive integer plus 4, we found it was as 4. When we talk about the absolute value of a negative integer, say minus 3, so we can say we simply remove the sign of 3 and its absolute value is actually 3. So another way we can find the absolute value of a negative integer is just by finding its distance on the number line from the center point 0, right? So it is basically a 3. So the absolute value of minus 3 is 3. And apart from this, we want to learn what is negative of a negative integer. So when we say negative of a negative integer, basically it means on the number line we take a negative integer. For example, we say minus 5, and we assume there is a mirror in the center point 0, and the negative of that number minus 5 will be the corresponding digit on the positive side. So when we say negative of a negative integer, it will be actually the positive integer 5. And same way, when we say a negative of positive integer, so it is basically, when we say a negative of a positive integer, we say, for example, the positive integer is plus 5, its negative will be the corresponding number on the number line on the other side of 0, so which will be minus 5. So you can simply assume that negative of a negative integer becomes positive and negative of a positive integer becomes negative. So this is an important concept. So next category on the number system is called rational numbers. So what are rational numbers? So rational numbers comprise of all the numbers which are represented as a divided by b, but the b should not be a 0. Then only we can say this kind of numbers are rational numbers. So assuming, so in this case a and b should be are integers and b is not a 0. That is the main condition for the rational numbers. So if we want to say examples, we can say 5 divided by 1. Okay, this is one example. Another example is, we can say 1 divided by 4. So we know 1 divided by 4 can further be represented in decimal form. Okay, but the main concept here for the rational numbers here is this 1 or 4, they are not 0, and we are representing one integer divided by another integer. Whether they can be further written in a simple form, like 5 divided by 1 can be written as 5, 1 divided by 4 can be further reduced to a decimal number as well. But the main concept here is they don't have a number which is dividing another number and is 0. And to understand the concept, we can also say the word rational comes from the word ratio. So basically, any two integers which can be represented in form of a divided by b, where b is not 0, they represent a ratio, and these kind of numbers are called rational numbers. The next category of numbers is irrational numbers. So irrational numbers are those numbers which cannot be made by dividing two integers, and the word irrational means there is no ratio involved, so it's not a rational number. So if we talk about example, so we think about all those numbers which are not in the category of rational numbers. For example, a square root of 2 or square root of 5, square root of 3, these all are those numbers which don't fall into the category of rational numbers, because they cannot be perfect squares. So they cannot be we cannot take a square root of these numbers, and they fall into a category which is, we categorize them as irrational numbers. Apart from this, there are some certain numbers like pi, which is a value onwards. So here we see that the number 2, 5 or 3, these are not perfect squares, so we cannot get the perfect square root of these all numbers, and these numbers we categorize them into irrational numbers. Same way, numbers like pi, whose value cannot be a certain perfect value, which is can be defined to a certain digits. So we can even find the value of pi up to 20 digits or more after the decimal. So these kind of numbers are also falling into the category of irrational numbers. And the next category of numbers is the real numbers. So when we talk about real numbers, we say a number that can be used to measure a certain quantity or a value or a distance or a temperature or a duration. So basically all the numbers which can be used to calculate some value, they are real numbers. And real numbers include both the rational numbers and irrational numbers. So we can say that rational numbers and irrational numbers together, they are called real numbers. So another set of numbers in the number system is called fractions. So what is a fraction? A fraction is a number representing a part of a whole. So basically, when you say the whole may be a single object or a group of objects. So when we say 1 by 2, so this is basically 1/2 of something which is a complete part. So in this case, the upper part is called numerator, and the lower part is called denominator. So whenever we talk about fractions, they are basically representation of a part of something which is complete, or we can say a part of a whole. So there can be some more examples which I can write here for fractions, like this is 2/3 of a whole, 1/4 of a whole, 1/5 of a whole, half of a something whole, 3/4 of something whole. So these are called all fractions, and these all have some part which is the upper part, which is called the numerator, and the lower part, which is called the denominator. So these all are fractions. The last category of number system is decimals. So what are decimal numbers? So we can say decimals are a type of numbers which has a whole number part and a fractional part, and they are separated by a point, and this point is called the decimal point. So I will just give you an example here. So assume you have a decimal number which is 25.7. So in this 25.7, this part is first part, this part is the second part, and this is the decimal point. So this part is a whole number, and this part is a fractional part, and after decimal, first digit, which is 0.7 here, is actually representing 7 divided by 10. If it was 0.72, so we would say it is 72 divided by 100. So same way here it is 0.7, and this part can be written as 7 divided by 10. So what you can say, 5.7 can be written as a whole number plus its corresponding fractional part, which is 7 by 10 here. So this is a representation of a whole number plus a fraction into a single type of number, which is called a decimal number.